Hi, my name is Ryan Hurd. I am the founder of Caregiver Smart Solutions. Now, I know you've heard the term aging in place, but have you heard the term living in place? Did you know that there's a Living in Place Institute? Well, stick around because we're going to have a talk with the founder of the Living in Place Institute. And we're going to find out how they can help you and your loved one live at home for as long as possible. All right, well, here we are. This is Louis Delaware. He is the co-founder of the Living in Place Institute. Louis, how are you doing?
It's a wonderful day here in Colorado. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great. It's actually sunny here in New Jersey. We're coming out of a cold snap, so I know that you guys just got some snow out in Colorado, but hey, that's the way it goes. So, Louis, I see that you're the co-founder of Living in Place Institute. We've spoke a lot of times. We've actually helped Caregiver Smart Solutions a lot with your feedback, and we've done a bunch of stuff for the home builder industry as well as NKBA. But, let's go back a little bit. Who is Louis Delaware? What do you do? What have you done? How did you ever get into Living in Place Institute?
Oh, thank you for the interesting question. I have a degree in mechanical engineering, and the first, more than half part of my career was involved in R&D on various technological products, from disk drives, the original disk drives that were the size of washing machines, to doing work with optics and lasers. But most of my career was focused on medical devices. I developed a number of products that would either save lives or make the outcome of surgery much better. And so it was a very fascinating part of my career. But like all good things, they come to pass. I just got kind of tired as to how long the development pipelines are for that, and all the various politics that go on with regards to developing products, especially when you're working with an outside company. Last product I worked on was minimally invasive hip and knee replacements. People with hip replacements would have the surgery and they would walk out surgery the same day. It was really quite amazing using computer-guided surgical tools to be able to do this. Really quite neat. And then you see these people within 2 weeks' time jogging on an artificial implant.
That's
so,
fascinating.
And likewise, the incisions were much shorter, smaller in length, just because you had the tools to be able to go in there. The doctor didn't need to have full visualization. So interesting stuff. But a good mechanical engineer, what do? They like working with tools. They like working on building things. And so once I finished doing that, I went off to do general contracting. I got my Class B general contractor's license. And so we were doing kitchen and bathroom models and basement finishes, things of that sort. And unfortunately, the recession started kicking in. I noticed that there was an unmet need out here of doing professional childproofing. Yes, there are indeed people across the country, including in New Jersey. I know a number of guys in New Jersey that do professional childproofing. And the unique thing about professional childproofing is not only you're helping make the house safer for the kids, you're making it less insane for the parents. But the thing about that is that, to do it properly, you're almost in every room, almost every nook and cranny in the house. And so I figured I was in well over 3,500 houses in the 14 years that I did this. I can say I saw a lot of great things. I saw a lot of really terrible things in regards to design. So with that, I started to say, okay, childproofing is a lot like senior safety sort of activities, because, depending on the circumstance, if somebody's got, like dementia, they're just like a child. They don't necessarily know what's good or bad for them. They're just kind of explore their territory, and who knows what they might end up getting into. So we would do a lot of the same things for people who had Alzheimer's or dementia in regards to locking doors, latches on cabinets, fixing furniture to walls, because if they lose their balance, what are they going to do? They're going to grab the nearest thing. It might end up being that dresser handle that may end up falling on top of them. Things of that sort.
That's very
And
interesting.
so I had written a book on how to childproof your home. It's on Amazon.
Right.
And the thing that you have what, 2 or 3 kids?
I do.
And it's a daunting activity trying to figure out how to be able to childproof, let alone figure out what products to use and then how to install them.
That's true.
And
I mean,
so,
from my own experience, as you said, having 3 young kids, and I've always been in the tech industry, the first thing that comes to mind is, mount the TV on the wall, as opposed to, remember, we used to have the big TVs that had the big butts that were really, really heavy. And we would actually put straps from the TV to the wall because we were afraid that a toddler, they use their environment, right, to stand up. So they're grabbing and they're not thinking about opening up the drawers. They're thinking about opening up the drawers and using it as a step. And the TV's on top, and it's fascinating to see from your standpoint, from being in the medical industry, and you're talking about designing something that's going to be minimally invasive and go from the physical ability to work on things to a house and still keep that mindset. It's very interesting. So let me ask you this. Is this where Living in Place Institute was born, kind of a thing? Where's Living in Place Institute come from?
how this came about was I attended a class that my partner, it wasn't back then, but my partner was teaching about, how to go about aging in place. And a couple of years after that, after I had the book released, I approached him and say, hey, look, I have this series of books that I want to do for a house. I started with children. I want to be able to then move to seniors and then come to the middle in regards to writing a book on safety, home safety for everyone. Okay. And so he was like a little bit skeptical about it. It's like, well, writing a book is really, it's very involved and there's all sorts of moving parts to it. It's like, well, look, here's my book. And I showed it to him.
Right.
And it's like, I have the editor, I have the publisher, I was self-published, but nonetheless, the person who helped me lay out the book, all those particular sort of things. It's like, okay. So we started doing that, and we started realizing that we can have by far more of an impact in regards to making homes safer for everyone by actually training other professionals as to what they should be understanding to do in almost every home. Okay. Wow. It's unfortunate that, let me go to the child side of things. You're bringing up TVs. Every 2 weeks here in the United States, a child dies as a result of either a piece of furniture or a TV falling onto them.
Wow.
And obviously there's a lot of other injuries that happen to kids, whether it's poisoning, falling downstairs, going through railings, the spindles that may be too wide, or even climbing over the top of them. The same sort of thing occurs with older adults in regards to preventing falls, because fall can be basically an unfortunate recipe for living in an assisted living facility or a rehab center, possibly for the rest of their life. And that's not something that we want to see. So, making the bathroom, which is the most dangerous place for most people, especially older people, a safer environment, putting better lighting in there, better flooring, appropriate use of grab bars all the way around to be able to make it so it's easy for people to get through. And some of the things that we'll talk about in a little while as to how smart technology can come into play for that. Right. So we then changed gears and started doing training for professionals, what we call our Certified Living in Place Professional Program, which is geared towards designers, whether it be kitchen bath designers, interior designers, or architects, to people involved in construction, whether it's the developer, a builder, a general contractor, or somebody who specializes in home modifications, and then to the medical professionals that come into play, like occupational therapists, physical therapists, and doctors and nurses. Depends on who ends up getting involved.
Right.
That's primarily the market for what our primary training is all about, to be able to let them understand, here are the things you should be doing. And incidentally, a lot of occupational therapists, about 20% of the people who've gone through our program, are medical professionals. And a lot of occupational therapists are recognizing that there is a really unique niche out there for them to be able to go out and do the assessments of homes, and be able to work with a designer to specify them and a contractor to build them. They're creating companies that have all three of them under one umbrella.
Now, let me ask you this. So I want to go back to one thing really quick, and that's the Certified Living in Place Professional. Now, we call it CLIP, and I actually went through the class, and I have to tell you, it has been mind-blowing. And what I mean by that is there's so many things that we really take for granted. And the one thing that the CLIP program taught me is there's so many things to identify that I realize I've seen before, but I didn't realize you're literally putting that person in the place of the consumer. So whether it's, we have the glasses that we put on, we've also put, taped our fingers together. And on one hand, it's kind of funny to see how everybody's trying to do things. But on the other hand, you guys really bring the human side to it of understanding, putting us that are on the outside in that situation. Exactly like the glasses, and you're talking about glaucoma and all those kind of things. So you have the Living in Place Institute, and I love your tagline. What is your tagline again?
All homes safe, healthy, comfortable for everyone, regardless of age or needs.
Yep. All homes, regardless of age or needs. And that goes back to your heritage, right? From whether it's designing medical devices to dealing with child-proofing homes to now, living in place. How do we allow our loved ones to, live in their place safely? And then you have the CLIP. So CLIP is all about certifying other professionals to look at things. So, I know you talk about grab bars. Now, I'm sure a lot of people when they think grab bars, they're thinking like I did, quite frankly. It's a silver bar that I got in Walmart for $12. But what I learned from you, no, that's more like a towel bar. So let's talk about what is CLIP. When you go through that program, what can I expect it to teach me?
In the Certified Living in Place Professional program, we want you to come out with a very broad knowledge base of, first off, why the importance of interprofessional teams. I was mentioning the medical professionals in construction, the designers, and then there's other people who are involved in that process as well that aren't, integrally involved throughout the whole project, but have a key role in it along the way. And then we go into the statistics and trends as to what's happening in this marketplace. It's really important to understand that these injuries aren't going away. Even though we've been making an emphasis on making homes safer, it just hasn't resonated enough with everybody because, we're in a state of denial. It won't ever happen to me. Okay.
Hey, we're not getting old. Around 29 again. We all do it.
Right. And so we get into that, and then we go into the medical issues of aging. Okay. The fact that, some people, you go into a restaurant, you see, well, maybe not right now, but in past times, you'd see a party of like 4 people, older people. I don't want to categorize them, but nonetheless, you see these people pulling out their smartphones, putting on their flashlights on, or they're using the camera to be able to zoom in on it. And personally, I think there is a cartel out there in regards to menus for restaurants that are printed on somewhat darker parchment paper with a light font that's italic. And it's really difficult to read. Okay. But most people aren't aware that as you age, your pupils of your eyes just don't respond the way they did when you were younger. So in essence, at age 60, you need 3 times more illumination to be able to see the same thing as one did when they were 20. Okay.
3 times the amount. So that's 3 times the amount of light. Now, whether it's in a restaurant or in a house, that's amazing. You don't realize that.
You don't realize it. And again, it's, why so many people have, as I call them, cheaters. They may have very good vision, but when it comes time to reading something in a less lit environment, they're pulling those out because they can't easily see it. And unfortunately, that only gets worse as you get older. And then there's other things that come into play regards to like cataracts or diabetic retinopathy or glaucoma, as you mentioned, or macular degeneration, amongst a variety of other circumstances.
Well, what I found fascinating also from going through CLIP was I remember two things very specifically. So it's how the brain is interpreting color. So in other words, like if you have tile and one of those tiles is black, it might look beautiful, but as we get older, the ability of the brain to understand or put in context, that sometimes looks like a hole. And let's say you were talking about bathrooms before. So you were talking about when we went through the classes, you know, you can build a beautiful bathroom and have no threshold, so you don't have to step over something. I think a lot of people understand that. But do a lot of people understand doing a horizontal line, because they're not realizing that as you get older, sometimes you'll have vertigo just from turning your head, and not having something horizontal to look at could be an issue of a fall. So talk a little bit more about that, like all these little nuances that we really take for granted.
Well, some people like these horizontal or horizon lines in bathrooms. Okay, they're usually like 5.5, 6 foot above the floor, depending on the individual there, and they're usually a contrasting color. Okay, it's kind of a nice offset from a design standpoint. It's kind of a unique circumstance there. As you were mentioning, somebody who bends down to grab a piece of soap and comes up too fast, or they turn too quickly, and they may have vestibular issues, and they saw all of a sudden now they're getting dizzy because they're getting vertigo in the bathroom. If it's like many bathrooms, it's a subway tile, the white tile, and the last I checked, I've never seen anybody take a shower with their glasses on, maybe their contacts, but rarely. And so you don't, when you're in there, you got lots of water vapor flying around, and your vision isn't all that good, and all you see is this snowy white background, and you can't really realign yourself. Whereas having one of these lines, in some cases, the person's going to be primarily sitting while they're bathing or showering, may want one down a little bit lower to be able to, again, give them that perspective of level. And that happens, many other places in the house. I mean, people like to see chair railing, around the house. Yes, it's going to be a little lower, and the intention of the chair railing is to protect the wall from being damaged by a chair. But many times you'll see people use that as an alignment means, or as a touch point as they're going around a room. They can't grab onto it, but they're using that just as kind of a guide as they go around the room. So a horizon line is a real important feature in showers and bathrooms and other places where people might end up having some issues in regards to balance.
Now, there was something else that you had also said in the course. I think when we talk about living in place or aging in place, people think, okay, we want 3-foot wide doors. They automatically think, how can we make it so it's you can have some kind of motorized scooter or anything like that in the house. But you talked about bending over, and even little things like having the outlets up at 24 inches. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the thing is, most outlets you're going to see them like 14, 16 inches off the floor. Some houses, when I was doing childproofing, because we're obviously very keyed in on electrical safety, I've seen them in baseboard molding. And, talk about, difficulty for somebody who has bad knees, bad hips, bad back, balance issues, to have to bend down that far. Then the other circumstances, somebody who may be in a wheelchair trying to reach all the way down to that to be able to plug it in isn't easy for them. Whereas 24 inches, think about where 24 inches is. It's a reasonable height without almost having to do any bending to be able to put outlets in the wall. And the interesting thing is that, electricians, for the most part, I think what they do is they use a framing hammer, put that on the floor, put the electrical box on top of it, use a hammer to be able to pound it in. And so that's where they've always done it. But when, you always run into the circumstance with untrained contractors as to, I've never put it in there before. And then once they see what it's like afterwards, it's like, I like this so much better. I'm going to do it differently in the future to be able to put the outlet at 24 inches above the floor. The same goes for switches. Sometimes switches can be placed too high for somebody who's, again, in a wheelchair that may have shoulder issues. so if it's what we say is put it at 44 inches above the finished floor. So it's, for the most part, it's easy for most everybody to be able to reach that.
Right.
And maybe out of the reach of a toddler, which is okay, but because they're going to do the on off sort of thing.
Right.
But that's not just a switch. It's all sort of electrical control devices, maybe a thermostat or a humidistat or whatever, having it at a reasonable height. And again, it's one of those sort of things is like, why haven't we done this before?
Yeah.
Okay? And that's a common theme that we've heard from people who've ended up having their home done that way. One of our graduates, she built her house more or less with our principles upside down, inside out. And it's like everybody that comes in the house, there's no thresholds in her house, including exterior doors. If you think of the complexity of trying to do an exterior door that has no threshold, what it has is a drop down seal. As the door shuts, it comes down and it basically keeps wind, water, snow, insects, rodents from coming into the house that way. But there's no threshold. So it makes it easy for everybody, including somebody who's moving, say, an appliance into the house without having to bounce over that or try to get it up over a step.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, all these things, it makes life easy for everybody.
And the thing, what I've extrapolated from it is, I think when we talk about living in place and aging in place, and as we're getting older, people automatically go to the wheelchair thing, not realizing that when you have no threshold going in the front door, yeah, it helps a wheelchair, but it also helps, one of those push carts, an electric motorized cart. It helps grandma, even if she just has, a cane to be able to move through. Again, it's not just the wheelchair, it's life. As you said, if we're moving in appliances in and out. So now let me ask you this. So we spoke about the physical aspect of living in place, things like grab bars, things like no threshold entrances or bathrooms, horizontal sight lines, using different colors, things like that. Now, talk to me about technology. So you have the physical world, and now you lay on technology. We've spoken about smart appliances. We've spoken about the smart microwave oven, which I love using now. Tell me more about how technology can help us live in place.
Well, let's start with the microwave you're talking about. There are a number of manufacturers out there now that you use an app on your phone that's tied to that appliance.
Yep.
And we were talking earlier about the difficulty some people have with regards to reading text. What these do is they use your phone, you scan the barcode in, and basically telling the microwave, this is what I want to cook. It knows what the item is. If it has, basically my oven, maybe 1100 watts. Okay, maybe another oven, maybe 700 watts. It'll compensate for that wattage, based upon how much time it needs to cook. And, some of these microwave recipes, put in for 5 minutes at 50%, and then take it out, stir it up, and put it in for another 5 minutes at 100%.
Right.
It's like, as many times I can't figure out how to be able to do that. And I can only imagine other people having that challenge. Here it's, okay, it does it automatically for you, and it will tell you on your smart device that, okay, phase 1 of cooking is done. Please go over it, stir it up, put it back in, and push start again, whether on the microwave on your phone. The whole intention here is to be able to make it as easy as possible for somebody who may have some significant sight challenges to be able to appropriately cook a meal. And this doesn't just stick with microwaves. There's all sorts of smart appliances that are out there, especially induction cooktops.
Right.
Okay. It's a much safer sort of technology than an open flame, open coil, or even just a coil that's underneath a glass surface that's electric. Things don't get hot. You're not going to run the risk of setting a sleeve on fire as you're going past an open gas burner while you're trying to get to something in the rear of the stove. And another nice thing about it is it turns off once it's all, once it senses the pot's not there after a few seconds, it turns off. It's a really amazing technology. I know a lot of people are like, well, it means I have to get new cookware. It's like, okay, great. But it's the trade-off here in many ways is speed, but the other is safety, which is paramount for everybody. The other thing in regards to technology in the house, we're all familiar with, smart doorbells,
Right.
and lighting. Well, let's go through the scenario that I always like to bring up, and that is, unfortunately, as some people age, they end up needing to use the restroom once or twice during the night. And many people choose not to turn any lights on because, first off, they don't want to wake up their partner because then they'll be grouchy, or they don't want to arouse themselves so much that it takes them forever to fall back asleep. So they try to make that migration to the toilet in semi-dark or really dark, and don't follow where the frame of the door is, hit it with their foot. Now they may end up tumbling over, and possibly injuring an arm, injuring their head, whatever. The scenario I like to look at is having some sort of sensor, whether it's a touchpad next to the bed or a sensor nearer to this underneath the bed, that when it senses you're getting out of bed, it turns on lights underneath the bed, very dim, okay, be able to help prevent you from kicking that toe board. And then in the bathroom, it turns the lights on at, say, a relatively low color temperature and also low lumen level, enough to be able to help guide you there to the toilet, guide you back to the bed, and senses that you've now either touched that pad or you came back to it, you've gotten in bed. Within a minute, the lights have dimmed back down again. Your partner is still sleeping blissfully, and you're now able to go back to sleep yourself. Again, the whole intention here is to be able to help prevent somebody from having that really bad accident at night.
And it's interesting. There's so many technologies out there. As you said, you've got lighting to illuminate getting up at night. You've got technology in the kitchen, so that induction technology, so you don't have an open flame. There's things like smart water, right? So it can go on the water going into your house, and it'll know if the house springs a leak. And these are all things that are available today that, help you and me, but they also help our aging loved ones and enable them to really live in place for longer, or as long as possible, right? We want them to live on their own. We want them to retain their dignity. I know here at Caregiver Smart Solutions, what we're trying to do is we're trying to leverage that technology and enable our loved ones to live independently in their own environment, wherever that is, retaining their dignity for as long as possible. So a combination of leveraging the Living in Place Institute thought process, and like clip and hats and everything that you guys doing, because I got to tell you, I'm a big proponent of that, especially after going through the courses, to what we're doing here at Caregiver Smart Solutions, having both sides of that, the physical side and the technology side. I think we can definitely help the millions of people that are going to be aging in place, you and me included, going forward. So, hey, listen, Louis, I know we could speak about this literally forever. I retain the right to have you back because I have so many more questions from the Living in Place Institute. But with that said, I know that you have to get going. I really want to thank you. I appreciate all your time. And hey, you got any last things to say?
Well, your product that you have there with Caregiver Smart Solutions, it would have been great for me to have it while my parents were alive, because the last thing my parents would allow me to do is to put an intrusive camera in their house. They needed it. My dad was part of the frequent faller club to a point where he, I wouldn't say monthly, but periodically the fire department would have to come out because my mom wasn't strong enough to get him back up, to come out to get him back up onto his feet. All those sort of things, to be able to understand what can be done to be able to monitor their comings and goings and their safety. So again, what you guys do there is really quite unique stuff without having cameras, that intrusive sort of thing that, again, I don't know if I'd want one in my house, just to have somebody watch me walk around in my skivvies.
There's got to be a better way. Just like you do at the Living in Place Institute, all those little nuances that add up to a really great experience. And hey, it's protecting our loved ones because we want them around for as long as possible. Well, Louis Delaware, the founder of Living in Place Institute, I really appreciate having you on. And there we go. So from our family to yours, Caregiver Smart Solutions.